Near Los Monjes, Venezuela, Caribbean Sea, 3:09 p.m. Bright afternoon, blue glare, and one U.S. patrol ship that wasn't supposed to become a headline.
Dark rock against white heat. The air shimmers like it's boiling in place. The water throws back sunlight so hard it feels aggressive. Every surface reflects. Every movement shows. High visibility. Nowhere to hide. The ship is a U.S. Navy patrol ship, USS Sentinel. Small by warship standard, fast, lean, built for presence, not parades. A working ship, the kind that passes through and disappears again. Today, it doesn't disappear, because the trap is already waiting. It starts the way these things always start, with sovereignty, with inspection, with a calm voice that pretends this is normal, but it's not normal. It's a seizure attempt built for cameras. Venezuela wants a prize they can drag across a screen before the day is done. A US patrol ship. Under tow, under control, surrounded by Venezuelan flags and Venezuelan voices. A moving stage set, and they want it before sunset. 6:12 p.m. That's the deadline. That's the finish line they've promised to Caracas. And the threat is simple, spoken like a future headline. We will parade the ship on state TV before sunset. Their plan was simple, but Admiral Tomas Villalobos made 5 catastrophic mistakes. 1. He assumed intimidation beats discipline. 2. He built the plan around cameras, not control. 3. He underestimated US rules, restraint and timing. 4. He exposed his command chain in the open. 5. He triggered a response window he couldn't survive. What happened in the next 2 hours and 57 minutes turned a planned Venezuelan trophy run into a blank screen and a silent capital. And it began with one number, 29 minutes, from 3:09 to 3:38. This is that story. At 3:09 p.m., USS Sentinel rides a calm swell near Los Monjes, running a routine presence mission along an inspection route that never makes headlines. 14 people make up the ship's immediate spine bridge watch, a small security element, and a boarding team staged for ordinary work. Nothing dramatic, no speeches, just heat, salt, and focus. The commanding officer is Lieutenant Commander Mason Hale, call sign Rook. Rook isn't here to start a fight. Rook is here to show up, be seen, and leave. But at 3:09, the sea starts filling with movement that doesn't belong. Fast boats, not fishermen, not curious traffic, purposeful, tight turns, hard lines. The kind of approach that says someone rehearsed it in the morning, then came back to do it for real in the afternoon. At 3:12 p.m., the first Venezuelan boat closes to a distance that feels personal in daylight. You can see faces, you can see body language, you can see cameras, and that's the first warning. Not the boat, the cameras. Because boats are tools, cameras are intent. A voice comes over a loudspeaker, too calm, too polished. US ship, reduce speed, prepare for inspection. You are in Venezuelan waters. It's delivered like paperwork. Lieutenant Commander Hale watches the approach through blue glare and heat shimmer, then answers with the same calm. Unable, one word, clean, flat, final. At 3:16 p.m., the Venezuelans don't back off, they multiply. 8 fast boats now, spreading wide enough to box the ship without admitting it's a box. Their wakes carve white scars through the glare. Their engines sound too proud for daylight, and behind them, hanging back like a handler, one larger support vessel holds position, white hull, broad shade awnings. A cluster of people standing where you'd expect equipment, not a combat ship, a staging platform, a set. Rook's bridge watch counts heads in the sunlight and estimates quickly, roughly 87 men across the boats and the staging deck. Too many for an inspection, too many for anything honest. At 3:20 p.m., Hale gets the first impossible discovery. One of his crew points off the port side toward the larger support vessel's deck. There's a camera rig, not a handheld phone, a rig, and a man in a headset talking into a device like he's directing a show, a prepared propaganda team. This isn't about sovereignty, this is about footage. Hale doesn't announce it like a victory. He keeps his voice low, because low voices keep other voices steady. They brought a studio, he says, so we don't give them a scene. At 3:24 p.m., the boats tighten again. 2 of them angle close, not to collide, but to make contact possible. Close enough for hands to reach, close enough for lines to fly. That's the detonation point. They aren't just harassing, they're trying to attach. They want to force a tow. Tow means control. Control means parade. Parade means state television. In daylight, it looks clean. That's the point. At 3:29 p.m., the first hard ultimatum arrives. Tactical, close, human. A Venezuelan officer on a boat yells across the water, voice sharp in the bright air. "Stop now. You will be boarded. Do not resist." It's meant to sound lawful. It sounds like theft. On the bridge, Hale doesn't raise his voice. He looks at the boats, then at his crew, then at the sun that makes every lie visible. "Hold discipline," he says. "No hero moves." At 3:33 p.m., the political ultimatum arrives. This one is colder. It comes over an open channel, and it's meant for a different audience. US ship, comply. Caracas is watching. By sunset, your ship will be presented as proof of Venezuelan sovereignty. Caracas is watching. Sunset is the deadline. 6:12 p.m., the trap isn't built to win a fight. It's built to win the day's broadcast. At 3:35 p.m., the Venezuelan boats make their move. You can see it happen before anyone says it. 2 boats surge in on opposite sides, matching Sentinel's motion, trying to get close enough to throw lines and pull the ship's nose off its path. No missiles, no explosions, just hands, rope, and leverage. The oldest kind of seizure, and the most humiliating because it looks orderly on camera. At 3:37 p.m., Hale's crew sees the line come up, coiled, ready, lifted like a question, and Hale makes the decision that saves the day. Not a violent decision, a disciplined one. He doesn't chase, he doesn't panic, he doesn't give the camera a flinch. He locks the ship into calm control and denies the contact window. On the internal net, he says one sentence, his one hero quote, short enough to remember, heavy enough to carry. Let them film us refusing. At 3:38 p.m., 29 minutes after it began, Caracas goes silent, not metaphorically, functionally. The feed from the propaganda deck cuts out mid-motion. The loud political voice disappears. The confident tone vanishes like a hand pulled off a switch. For a half second, there's nothing. No new orders, no triumphant narration, no clean ultimatum. Just bright sun, hard glare, and boats that suddenly don't know who's holding the leash. The Venezuelan fast boats hesitate. One drifts wide, one slows, one turns the wrong way, then corrects like a confused animal. Above them, 3 drones that had been hovering like eyes begin to wobble, not attacking, not diving, drifting, searching for a signal that isn't there, and in that drift is the truth. The story has lost its director. At 3:41 p.m., Hale feels the shift before he hears it. The enemy's posture changes from confident to improvised, and improvisation is dangerous because it's not thinking, it's reacting. Higher command breaks in with the first message that matters. Rook, maintain. Support inbound. Estimated time 21 minutes. 21 minutes. The second clock begins, and it hits differently than the sunset clock. Sunset is a propaganda deadline. 21 minutes is a rescue promise. At 3:44 p.m., the Venezuelan boats try to fill the silence with noise. 2 different voices overlap on the same frequency. Hold position. No. Attach now. Maintain ring. Tow them. Tow them. Orders collide. One boat surges forward at the wrong time and cuts across another boat's lane. Their wakes intersect and slap each other into spray. For a second, it looks dramatic. Then it looks messy. In daylight, messy reads like weakness. At 3:48 p.m., Hale sees something else. On the support vessel, the so-called inspection platform, the headset man is still talking, but now he's talking faster, not directing a show, trying to restart one. A crew member on Sentinel mutters a phrase that lands hard. They're trying to edit reality in real time. Hale doesn't answer with philosophy. He answers with an order. Keep it boring, he says. Boring kills the story. At 3:52 p.m., the Venezuelans issue a new ultimatum. Tactical, again, closer, harsher. Stop your engines. Accept tow. You are detained. Detained, a legal word, used like a mask. Hale answers without heat. Negative. At 3:56 p.m., the enemy tries to force contact again, not with courage, with pressure. A boat comes in too tight. Another mirrors it. A third circles behind like it's searching for a weak side. On Sentinel, the small security element shifts in place. Not theatrical, not eager, just ready to prevent a boarding attempt from becoming a body count. No one on Sentinel wants violence, but nobody on Sentinel is going to be taken either. At 3:58 p.m., one drone drops low enough that the wine carries over water, then climbs again in a nervous arc, not wind. Confusion. If the propaganda team was the director and the director's feed is dead, then the drones are just machines in sunlight, and sunlight makes lies harder to hide. At 4:01 p.m., Caracas tries to speak again. A clean voice returns for a moment. Too polished, too official. US ship, you will comply. This is a national matter. Then the channel cracks. The voice stutters. The signal goes thin again. Not a dramatic explosion, just instability. And instability is the enemy of coordination. At 4:05 p.m., the Venezuelans attempt the seizure again. A line comes up again. A hand throws. The line misses, slaps water and drags uselessly. Small failure, loud message. This is mistake number 2, paying out in daylight. They built the plan around cameras, not control. So when the camera chain breaks, the hands get clumsy. At 4:09 p.m., the support vessel begins to shift position, not a retreat. A subtle angle away, like it wants to keep filming without being close enough to get caught in consequences. That's the behavior of a crew that knows it's part of something dirty. At 4:11 p.m., the boats start arguing again on open channels. Not with full sentences, with fragments. Hold, now, wait, go. It's a force trying to act unified while the chain is slipping, and the more they force it, the more it shows. At 4:14 p.m., Hale gets another short message from higher command. Our craft overhead for eyes on, no details, no bravado, just presence, just proof that this isn't a lone ship being bullied on a bright afternoon. Hale says one quiet line to his bridge watch. Now they're seen. At 4:18 p.m., the Venezuelans change tactics in the only way they can. They go louder. The political voice returns, raw now, angry, less rehearsed. By sunset, we will present your ship. This is an order. It's not meant for Hale. It's meant for someone in Caracas who needs to believe the trophy is still coming. At 4:22 p.m., the first sign of US reinforcement becomes visible in behavior, not in silhouette. The boats spread wider, the drones climb, and the support vessel's deck, where the headset and cameras were, looks suddenly smaller, like a stage with the lights turned on. At 4:27 p.m., the additional US ship becomes real in the Venezuelans' posture. You still don't see it clearly. You feel it. The ring loosens. The approaches become less confident. The boats stop trying to attach lines and start trying to look like they never planned to. That's mistake number 1, collapsing. They assumed intimidation beats discipline. They assumed a small patrol ship would fold. It doesn't. At 4:31 p.m., the Venezuelan boats try one more coordinated push. It lasts seconds. 2 boats surge. A third hesitates. The surge breaks. In daylight, failure is obvious. The wake patterns don't lie. At 4:36 p.m., the propaganda staging deck shows its hand. Crew members crouch. Equipment gets pulled back from the rail. The headset man stops pointing. The show is ending because the show has become a liability. At 4:39 p.m., the final ultimatum arrives. Harder, sharper, desperate. Last warning. By sunset, Caracas will broadcast your surrender. There it is again. Caracas, sunset, 6:12 p.m. But now the words sound thinner, because the day is still bright and the trap is no longer clean. At 4:43 p.m., Hale gets a short question from higher command. Not permission to destroy, not permission to escalate. A human question. Rook, status. Hale answers with 3 words. Controlled. No contact. He keeps it simple because the goal is simple. Survive the edit. At 4:47 p.m., the rumor enters, an enemy helicopter. A voice on an open channel says it like a threat. A helicopter is inbound. You will comply. It's meant to create fear. But in daylight, fear needs proof, and proof doesn't show up. The rumor hangs in the air and dies there. At 4:52 p.m., the US helicopter arrives on the edge of the scene. Presence and pickup capability. A moving shadow across glare. Not hovering for drama. Hovering like a question the Venezuelans don't want to answer. And now the Venezuelan drones don't look like eyes. They look like toys that wandered too close to something bigger. At 4:56 p.m., one of the Venezuelan drones drifts, then disappears from view. Not an explosion, not a spectacle, just gone. and the disappearance changes behavior instantly. Boats stop pressing in. Support vessel turns a few degrees more away, because when your cameras start blinking out, your plan starts bleeding out. At 5:02 p.m., the Venezuelans begin to back away in fragments, not as a unit, as individuals trying to save face. One boat peels off too fast and nearly trips over its own wake. Another slows and lingers, as if waiting for an order that never comes. At 5:08 p.m., the support ship closes within rapid reach. Not a cinematic reveal, a change in the decision space, a shift in how the Venezuelans drive their boats. They stop trying to attach lines. They start trying to leave without looking like they're leaving. At 5:14 p.m., the sun is still hard, but you can feel the afternoon aging. The Venezuelans can feel it too. Every minute that passes is another minute closer to a broken promise in Caracas. At 5:19 p.m., the propaganda platform makes a choice. It turns away more noticeably. The stage is leaving the theatre, and when the stage leaves, everyone else begins to look like what they are: boats, men, noise. At 5:27 p.m., higher command makes the call, not to punish, to end the capability, to shut down the seizure attempt before sunset. Because this is mistake number 5. They triggered a response window they couldn't survive. At 5:33 p.m., the controlled shutdown begins. It is precise. It is contained. It is designed to remove the tools of capture. Boats, staging, the ability to attach and tow without turning the sea into a spectacle. One fast boat loses momentum and drifts, no longer part of a ring, just a problem in daylight. Another boat peels away so fast it nearly skips across its own wake. A drone disappears from its hover like a lie that ran out of power, and on the larger support vessel, the one that carried cameras and headsets, the deck clears. Headsets come off, people crouch, the show ends. At 5:38 p.m., the enemy's comms turn into fragments again. Not threats, not confident orders, just sharp breaths and clipped words. Pull back, move, enough. At 5:44 p.m., the additional US ship is close enough to stabilize everything. The aircraft overhead keeps the picture honest. The helicopter remains present, ready to pull someone out of the water if pride turns into accident. And Sentinel, the ship that wasn't supposed to become a headline, does the least cinematic thing possible. It keeps moving, calm, controlled, unseized. At 5:48 p.m., the Venezuelan boats break formation completely. Not a dramatic retreat, a quiet collapse, a ring that no longer remembers why it existed. At 5:53 p.m., the support vessel is leaving the area entirely. Whatever was supposed to be broadcast later is now unusable. Not because it was censored, because it's embarrassing. At 5:58 p.m., Hale gives one last internal reminder. Stay disciplined, he says. They'll try one last stunt, because deadlines make people stupid. At 6:01 p.m., the link-up is complete. The additional US ship is close enough to lock the scene down. The helicopter stays ready. The aircraft overhead holds the truth in place. And the Venezuelans, without coordination, without clean comms, without a director, no longer have a seizure capability. They have boats in sunlight. At 6:07 p.m., the Venezuelan force disperses. No parade formation, no trophy escort, just scattered movement and silence. The sunset deadline is 5 minutes away. 6:12 p.m., the trophy was promised. The parade was promised. The broadcast was promised. But there is nothing to broadcast except failure. At 6:12 p.m., the sunset window arrives. The light softens. The glare fades. The islands darken into silhouettes. And there is no Venezuelan trophy ship, no US patrol ship under tow, no state television parade, just water, heat easing into evening, and an operation that never got its ending. Now the numbers can be spoken with the kind of clarity that daylight forces. US casualties, 0 killed, 1 wounded, minor injury during the close pressure and spray-slick motion, treated on board. Venezuelan losses, 27 incapacitated in the chaos of failed close approaches and the collapse of coordination, multiple boats disabled, 1 drone asset lost, the propaganda staging effort aborted, support clock, 21 minutes from the message that changed the psychology of the fight, and the clock that matters most, 29 minutes. From 3:09 p.m. to 3:38 p.m., that was the moment Caracas went silent. Not because they chose restraint, because the story stopped working. So what did Los Monjes teach both sides? First, Intimidation looks bigger than it is when the target stays disciplined. Second, if your operation depends on cameras, you lose control the moment the cameras lose you. Third, restraint and timing don't look dramatic, but they win decision space. Fourth, when your command chain is exposed, confusion spreads faster than courage. Fifth, daylight makes lies harder to hide. Near Los Monjes, Venezuela, Caribbean Sea, 3:09 p.m., bright afternoon, blue glare, and a patrol ship boxed in for a broadcast. 3:38 p.m., 29 minutes later, Caracas goes silent, and the seizure script collapses. 6:12 p.m., sunset arrives, and the trophy never appears. In daylight, you can film a threat, but you can't always film control.